Hey everybody, it's Richard Harris and Scott Leese here with another fun and exciting episode of the Surf and Sales podcast. Quick, want to give a shout out to our sponsors of Salesforce, Sales Cloud, Vidyard, Regi.ai, and Outreach.io. We truly appreciate what they do for the sales community as a whole, not just their services and their technology, but sharing great content and best advice and best practices. So if you are looking to grow your revenue, close some in the end of this year, and of course, grow in 2022, please check out our sponsors. We appreciate it. Without any further ado, I want to introduce our friend Bob Perkins from the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals, AA-ISP. And we're super glad to hear you. So good to see you.
Great to be here. Thanks. Glad you reached out and we connected a little bit. So thanks.
Yeah. So Bob, some people know, but I think a lot of people don't know. What and when did you decide to create the AA-ISP? Like, where was its origin story? Just to give us some context.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Most of my career before the AA-ISP was leading inside sales teams. And my first inside sales job called telesales with Unisys, about 2 years in, I just knew I kind of had a calling. I fell in love with it. And I was always the underdog. I was a 150-pound right guard in high school football, a big high school team. So I knew what it was like to be the small weakling in the group. And I set out to prove that inside sales could sell. I mean, come on, sales is sales, right? You don't have to be there in person. So along that journey from Unisys to SGI and a couple other companies, I realized that I wanted more. Miller Hyman, a lot of these big sales training firms were out there, but there wasn't. I tried to get something specific for this growing inside sales thing, which was tough. Back then we had the phone, maybe some email. That's it. You didn't have video, social, texting, none of that. Interestingly, back in 1993, we actually had a hybrid model. My tele sales reps traveled to meet customers once a quarter. It's pretty cool. But I realized we needed good training. We needed resources. And I sort of got together with a few peers and we benchmark and had these little roundtables. And back then I said, yes, we need something. We got to stand something up that is committed to advancing inside sales to the next level. And the thought of an association came to my mind. And it was all about bringing mostly leaders together to just share ideas. That was the foundation to learn from each other. And a lot of them were dialing me up anyway, saying, hey, do you have someone that can lead this team? I'm looking to hire. Hey, what are you doing for compensation? So the motion was already kind of underway. And it's funny when I had this dream, if you will, I told my wife about it for 2 years, and finally she goes, "You just gotta shut up. I'm tired of hearing this. Just go start the damn thing." And so that's kind of that's the origins of it, really.
Sounds like our origin of surf and sales, Scott. And I'm like, just go do it.
Well, yeah, except for the part where it took Bob 2 years to actually take action.
I didn't take that. We did it pretty quick, actually, I thought. So
we did it super quick. That's what I'm saying. I'm giving Bob grief, and God bless his wife who pushed him off the edge, and he finally went for it.
It was a circumstance. I was commuting full time Monday through Friday every week to Salt Lake City from Minneapolis to run a large team, VP of Inside Sales in Gen X, and then someone wanted me to start a brand new team in St. Paul. And I'm like, heck, I'm going to stop traveling. This is the time, because that was an easy job to do. I just called all my friends and gave them offers, and they came and they started the team. They didn't need me to manage them. It's kind of like Steve Stricker, just get out of their way. They did.
Now, I want to ask a question about the growth of the community, and micro communities, including ours and others that I'm involved with have all kind of bubbled up, I'd say, and become all the rage, if you will, in the last 2 years. How do you think about the strategy for community growth when you're just kind of getting started? And then the second part of that question is, how do you know when to flip the switch and try to monetize?
Well, that's a really good question. I haven't really thought too much about that. I guess the answer is a little bit, it depends on what your goal is. But oftentimes you start out with a very well-intentioned goal and it turned into something. In my case, and maybe some people can draw a parallel to this, in my case, I was driven to do it because there was a need to do it. The very first conference we did, the first year, I thought, this is going to be fun to do on the side. We'll be able to, maybe I brought a business partner in, Larry Reeves, and I said, maybe this thing can afford to pay him full time. He wasn't working. Maybe we'll make enough money that I'll keep working.
Imagined more as a side hustle kind of thing.
In the beginning, sure. Yeah, I did. But then after when year 2 happened, it was kind of the goosebump year. And I go, man, we got something, right? And we're going to keep feeding it and we're going to add employees and all that.
What can I ask? What was that trigger for year 2?
I'll tell you, I remember the moment. The first conference we had about 50, 60 people. Year 2, we went from 50 some to over 200. And I opened up the conference and I held up an old headset. You remember the old headsets we used to wear? They were
I remember selling before we even had headsets.
Yes.
The wire, not the comfy kind that looks cool, but the thing that, the wire and that wire it plugged in. And I held it up and I said, we have surpassed this. It's not this tele thing anymore. And I painted the vision. It was about a 15-minute. And somebody got up and said, I just want to tell you that from the bottom of my heart, we thank you what you started. The whole place stood up spontaneously and did like one of these standing ovation things. And I'm not saying that to say, oh, this is something great I started, but it was sort of like this fulfillment of, I knew it. I knew there was a need for this thing and I knew people were hungry for it. And it was such a fulfilling moment.
And how and when did you decide to flip towards monetization? I'm asking because I think that it is at least in the current climate, like a difficult thing to kind of gauge. And I talk to a lot of people with communities now, communities who have, a few thousand people in them. And they haven't tried to monetize yet, and they're scared to try to monetize yet. How do you think through that, and how do you advise some of those folks?
Once again, we did not chase the money. The money came to us. And I think if the opportunity, and I'll give you an example. When we started this thing, I'm thinking, okay, well, we got to charge money to people to attend so we can pay the hotel bill. All right. You got to do it. That's how you monetize in the beginning. Get your costs covered. If you have a little left over, we advised an attorney and an accountant, said, hey, should we go nonprofit or profit? They go, well, it'd be a lot easier to fire this thing up as a for-profit LLC. We go, great. So we did that. We didn't chase the money, but I never even thought of a sponsorship when I started this thing. I never thought of a chapter when I started this thing. I just thought of bringing people together and making it work and covering our cost. And all of a sudden, some sponsors started coming in. And when that happens, you the pieces of the puzzle fall in place. And now we go, hey, we got something here that we can grow, we can monetize, and people will pay based on what they get out of it, attendees and sponsors. And then, you know, some other revenue streams started. Do you know our cost for membership the first year was higher than it is today? Not the sponsorships, though. They every year they go up. So, you know, we kind of met the need, and then we took advantage of revenue opportunities, all while keeping a litmus piece of litmus paper handy that said, just keep one thing true, and that is, does it help the people that need the help? Right. That was kind of the stay true to the course piece. We have not been perfect at that. We've made mistakes with that. And we continue to fumble that a little bit. But if that's your guiding principle in light, it'll help you be true to your mission and deliver as best you can deliver.
What are you seeing differently this year in the community, or the last 18 months, than previous? Because you've been, your community's been around, OG, right? One of the originals, right?
Yeah.
OG, one of the original communities.
Yeah.
So what do you feel is different now than then?
Well, there's certainly more opportunity, not just to begin with. There's communities like for women in sales, a number of them, which are providing great value, I think. There's some around enablement. You have the SES. I remember talking to them years ago. I said, guys, you got this huge opportunity, and how are you paying for things? Because there's ways you can monetize it. I remember talking to them about it and saying there's a lot of sponsors out there that, if nothing else, can help you improve your conference, what you do and what you put forth to the members. So there's more of them. There's more specific kind of communities, I think, that I see. This reminds me a little bit of, I don't know if you guys follow the Ryder Cup. I'm a big golf nut, and I watched the whole thing over the weekend, and it's kind of this new guard, and numerous times they were saying young rookies, fresh. This is not your old way of leading. Even Stricker, the coach, basically said, I let them be them. Right. So I think you're seeing a little bit of that in some of these communities as well. New ideas, some young people leading the helm.
What do you see as you do events, right, and sponsors? What are you seeing as the value that they want, both short term and long term, right? Like, what do you think it is that they're doing, and how do you, without giving away all your secret sauce, of course, how does AA-ISP make sure that you have those long term sponsors? Do you do single event? Do you try to do them for the whole year? Do you try to do, like, how do you just giving advice to these folks?
Yeah. And I have these conversations with sponsors. And my playbook for the best of the best sponsors, and I have a person in mind, just talked to him an hour ago on the phone, who did this extremely well. When they sponsored, they provided complete thought leadership and ways to improve, and they brought such tremendous value from their past learning on how to perform as a leader, an SDR, an AE, that they developed a natural belonging and following in the community. Sponsors that come in, they want the list and they want it quickly, and they want a lot of visits at the booth and this and that, are being very short-sighted. So we find that the sponsors that flourish the best are the ones that are in it for the longer haul, that they become a bit known as much as a thought leader as they do as a solution provider.
Right.
This one person that I'm not going to mention his name, but people might put two and two together. I think it was Leadership Summit 4 or 3 or 4. We had a huge turnout in Dallas. He takes his cell phone out calls a person he's never spoken to, holds the microphone up to the cell phone. There's in front of 500 people. The guy answers, and I know who he called, and I'll tell you this: that he didn't know the guy didn't know him, and the guy answered, and he got through a cold call on main stage, unrehearsed. And man, if that didn't, it could have gone both ways, I guess, but it went well, I even heard one of our sponsors, Connect and Sell, one of their guys came and fired up Connect and Sell at an executive retreat. Ding, 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 up this, hello, unrehearsed. And, it takes a lot of courage to do that. But then again, it's someone that's kind of putting their money where their mouth is a little bit. And you got to like that. You really do.
I like it's like, it's almost better than a live demo, right? I mean, it is a live demo, right? Like, hey, we're going to show you how we do this, and here we go, right? And I could see that being a very different booth approach or engagement approach as a sponsor that they should do, right? Like that's an interesting play.
And think a little bit about it this way. And here's something I'll layer onto your sponsor question, and that is, it's more and more this whole what works in sales, it kind of keeps going full circle. And we, when tech got really big and these great tools, and they are great tools, and there is a place for cadences, right, and all that, but we thought we could win with quantity, and we're finding out pretty obviously that, as my phone just gave me another scam call when we were talking, that quantity can't outpace quality. And so I would give that same, and I do give that same message to sponsors, that, become transparent, become helpful, serve before you sell, become part of the community, be a real thought leader. And you're going to gain, it's like the folks that come to the retreats and just become friends with people. Those are the people that are getting lots of referrals, even if somebody at the retreat doesn't need what they have. And usually they don't, but they become such a important piece of this whole world that they're going to earn business because they're trusted.
And they're thinking long-term, as you said, as opposed to short-term, quick buck, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think about podcasts? Do you think they're helping now that everybody has one? Are there too many of them? Are we all screaming the same shit?
I did the Monday Morning Sales Minute until Cameron told me that I can stop doing it. I'd love doing it. Both of you've been on some Monday Morning Sales Minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I used to do your training Tuesdays once a month.
Yeah,
many years ago. So
yeah, and we're working with a gentleman that spoke at one of our retreats. He's doing a nice little consulting work with us around kind of reimagining a little bit what membership means and all that. And he's helping with some of the finer parts of marketing. He thinks we should fire up another podcast, and great. I'm here. I can do it, or Ashley can. But all that said, there's a lot out there. Boy, there's a lot out there.
How do you think about standing out or being different or unique, because there is so much out there in terms of podcasts and the chatter and the noise and all that?
Part of it has to do with hats, right? I mean, like, I like your hat,
Thank you.
And
for people who are not watching, I am wearing an Arizona State Sun Devils hat just to piss Richard off.
I almost brought my Arizona hat. That's the funniest thing.
Listen,
not to piss you off, but I should have.
I kind of a little bit, there's a little seriousness to that. There's a guy, Morgan Ingram. Okay. He always had that little fedora kind of thing. And I said, this guy is pretty early in his career and he's a smart guy. I get it. I said, but I think that hat helps his attractiveness and his stickiness with the audience. I really do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's, you know, this is a little bit of Hollywood, even if you don't want it to be, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I get it. And, you know, it's interesting. I couldn't find it, but usually I have a big hat that says surf on it. And Scott has his one that says pray for surf. So whenever we go to things, we often wear those.
I used to have my Titleist hat on when I did my podcast from the RV traveling around, but yeah.
Yeah. So that stuff does matter. I completely agree. The branding piece, we were just talking to Chris Beal and he was talking about brand, not quite that level, but more on your personal brand and how you figure it out, which is what I know how you lead AA-ISP. What are you seeing around managing remote? And the reason I ask is because you've been remote. AA-ISP has been remote for years, long before, right? Yeah. And you know, you're like me, where I was like, I did 1 year of outside sales, and I was like, this is ridiculous. This, you know, and it was like, but we were seen as sort of the weird ones. We were the weirdos, you know, at least in my spaces. But what are you seeing about the remote piece now? Because everybody's in inside sales rep.
Yeah, well, we've done probably 3 different little surveys we fire up and get it out to our top companies. And so we got a good litmus test on what's happening. And the vast majority are not going back full time, only like 7%. Huge hybrid thing gonna take place. So we know that. But I had this question the other day, and there were 3 people on. It was some sort of webinar. I said, "This is a yes or no answer. You can't give me anything other than pick one. You think remote is more productive, working from home most of the time, or do you think going to an office is more productive?" And there were 3 guesses. So you guys tell me which way do you think it went out of 3 people? Who voted for what? Working from home, remotely more productive, working from the office more productive.
Wait, what were the roles of the 3 people?
Okay, they were all in a leadership role. I'd have to look it up. One was from a very huge enterprise company heading up SDR. The other 2 were leaders, and I don't know if it's SDR or AE, but it would be an inside sales kind of leader role.
I'm gonna guess that those 3 people said in office is more productive.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess that the enterprise leader said remote was more productive, and the other 2, because they're smaller, thought they needed to be in the office.
Thank you, Richard. You're the winner. 2 of the smaller companies remote. The enterprise said the office.
That makes
I'm kind of glad
I'm
glad she did, because I was hoping we'd have a little bit of.
By the way, I disagree vehemently with the people who think that they have to be in the office to be more productive.
Oh, I think you go to the office to build culture now.
Nah, so. You know, I don't buy that anymore. I don't think we're going back to the office days. Who wants to go do that? Find me a sales rep who wants to go do that.
They will.
Hey, you know what? We're asking that quite. We got another survey, a more in-depth one going out. I think it's with BC. No, it's our own survey. But we asked the question, where would you prefer to be to all the sales reps that are going to take it? So we'll have an answer on that. And I kind of agree with you. Who does? You might have 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5% maybe, but you know, back in the day, it's like, how are you going to learn? How are you going to learn by osmosis? How can you fire up a campaign? How can you ring the bell? But
you don't need that anymore.
No.
Well, it is interesting because I agree. It has taught us that our training needs to get better because you can't learn through osmosis. You know, if I think about it, learning through osmosis was really a sales manager's way of being lazy, because they didn't know how to articulate what needed to be learned.
MBWA, managed by walking around.
I've not heard that one. Scott forced that one. He used to text us and say, "Get off your CPU, go walk around the floor."
So stop sitting there trying to be the VP of spreadsheets.
Right.
Go walk around the floor and coach somebody, damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a VP of inside sales and they wanted me to take, listen, this is a true story. They wanted me to take a class in pivot tables. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember getting that same spiel, Bob. I remember specifically a CEO telling me, I think it'd be really good for your career if you went and took like a Excel master class somewhere. I'm like, what? No, that has nothing to do with my job whatsoever.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
How do you see, because you see it, I keep asking these questions about how do you see it, because you have this purview into organizations that I think a lot of people don't. It's been the rise of revops, right? First it was the rise of sales ops. Then now it's sort of morphed into the revops piece.
RevOps, yeah.
What are people still getting wrong about those pieces, do you think?
Look, I don't want to discredit anything here, but the flavor of the month, right, has been around a lot longer than I've been alive. We've all been alive, right? So even back, I remember my first 5 years in this thing, I had this metrics chart, and I was measuring ridiculous, stupid stuff. And I brought it to my senior vice president. Well, yeah, we do this number of calls. Here's how much connect time, and the manager to rep ratio, and if we do how many quotes, we get a sale, and all this stuff. I was guilty of creating the next focus area of what we want to be. Even when I sit here and say quality over quantity and personalization is king, I feel a little bit vulnerable there, because will it always be that way? Right. So, the challenger sale, you can name a million of these different things that, that have come and, have slowly sort of faded into obscurity a little bit. And, I wonder about that with some of these things. Does it mean sales?
What are the things that you can plant a flag in and say, okay, this will always be one of the 10 commandments of sales?
Yeah. Let's start with people. Just start with people.
Do you think, can I challenge you on that though?
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine a world 50 years from now where AI has become so intelligent that it can interpret and understand emotions and empathy. You see what I'm saying? Like, can an inside salesperson be ripped and replaced 50 to 100 years from now by some sort of AI that replaces like the people factor?
The answer is maybe, but I'm going to re-challenge you on that.
Yeah.
To say that this dialogue these comments you just made were the same comments that people made about the computer back in the 1980s, replacing jobs.
That's
right?
fair. That's fair. I wasn't around for those conversations. Richard and you were around for those conversations. So you have an advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. But the same kind of concept. And the answer is more jobs were created. A whole industry was created. So I love not talking to anybody when I buy some expensive stuff. I bought a $5,000 guitar to add to my collection, and had to, I didn't talk to anybody. I texted, went online. When I go to Amazon, spend all the money. I love not. And so I'm the person that doesn't need to meet someone.
That's also because you're an expert at that. Like, I think where the salesperson comes in is when someone doesn't know or there's questions, right? If there's, I agree with you, Scott, that there are certain things where, like, that's what Amazon is. I don't need to ask the question, right? In fact, when, again, Scott's not old enough, but when even before Amazon, when people were purchasing in the early 2000s online, like I remember the first year people could do Christmas shopping, we were very comfortable buying a stuffed animal online.
Yeah.
we were not, as humans, comfortable buying $1,000 television. People needed, for that price, they needed to see it. And now, whether the TV's become more commoditized, which I don't know that it has,
Yeah.
we just have more knowledge. So we're much more, people are buying cars now without test driving them, right? There's Carvana and all those places. So I think it has to do with the knowledge you have around what you're purchasing. And then based on the lack of knowledge, that's where the salesperson comes in, Scott. And so to your point of like, you know, like why you like Qualia so much, right? It was so disruptive for that industry. You know, any industry that's a paper related industry, they're going to need salespeople for a while. Lost you.
Bob, one of Bob's rocks is people.
People.
But what else would be in this like 10 commandments thing that you would say is never going to go out of style?
You know, I think the person's in the center of that, but the offshoots from that are really good communication. Right now, that can mean we need, and you know, Richard and I, we did this on an episode recently. I think we talked about really good, effective listening, really good listening, and good. Remember that webinar, questioning, and even written communication, verbal communication, video communication. That's really important. And we see, I'm sure you more than me, Richard, or both of you, you see evidence of weaknesses there, probably more than I even see. But we do have weaknesses there. I'm not sure the why behind it. So there's the skill piece, the softer skill piece, the business maturity, career maturity piece, I think comes into play. But again, it's kind of layered around the person. And the other piece is we've all had bad experiences with bosses, right? I'm sure most people have. And I've had a few.
Richard has for sure, because I was his boss at one point. So that's guaranteed.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Had a bad experience.
But I think the leaders of the future, they've always had a lot of responsibility to bear, but we have a tremendous responsibility to bear, and we have to do right by the people we're leading. And I had felt coming up through corporate America, getting the hell beat out of it at QBRs. Even when I was managing inside sales, we had to go to QBRs, and I was trying to figure out how to win, how to present the team better, how to make the number look better. And I realized that beating and managing with a strong fist and micromanaging was so detrimental, just detrimental to the person and even to the goals and to the mission. And so I kind of took it as a little bit of my own project, is to try to find a way I can affect that change, so that the leaders are, servant leaders. Doesn't mean they're not strong and can't, push people hard and have high expectations, but their own ego is checked at the door. They now become stewards of the people that they're responsible to lead. And that's a big responsibility. It's like a parent, really. You have to model behavior. You have to be selfless. You have to, have your kid's best interest above your own.
Is that something that, as you continue to go on in your career, you every now and then think to yourself, I don't want to be in charge of anybody anymore. I want to go back to the beginning where I don't lead people. I just lead myself. I don't want that responsibility. Does it ever get heavy to carry all that?
No,
or it's just like a calling for you.
It's a calling. I've always wanted to, I'm going to use this term, and it's going to sound really weird, but I always wanted to be in charge of other people. I mean, it was very fulfilling for me. But those that I have been responsible for, I think will tell you that, you know, Bob gives 100% of his heart, is very open and things like that. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I still have a lot of areas I wish I was better at.
So,
Right.
so if leadership is a calling,
Yeah.
what is a leader supposed to do if they find themselves kind of burning out or getting tired of that? Is that, yeah, what are they supposed to do if you're starting to think to yourself like, oh, this is getting to be a bit much? Because I think I could hear that potentially and interpret it and be like, oh, fuck, maybe I'm not a leader. Like, I don't have this calling that Bob has. If I'm having these doubts and questions, like maybe I want to, you know, do something for myself for a little bit. Does that mean I'm a bad leader? And I could see that potentially being like a spiral that somebody goes down in terms of that line of thinking.
You know, burnout is real. I've experienced it a few times in my career. I was in a caustic environment, and I intentionally left it, and it was like I was able to breathe again. That's around the time when I started the AA-ISP. And so, not knowing that I was leaving to do that, knowing I just needed to leave. And people leave bad leaders. We know that all the time. And so, you know, sometimes people need to change the entire environment. And if it's not that, maybe they need to, you know, they need to do something different for a while. But it doesn't mean you're a bad leader if you're burnt out, but it might mean that there's a different path you need to take, maybe.
How did you handle your burnout? Right. I've been there. Scott, I don't even know if you know this story. I came home once when I was working for you, and it wasn't because of you. Well, maybe it was actually.
Thanks for the clarifier.
So, it was the grind we were in. Like, it wasn't you, right? We know where it came from. But I literally just came into you know, our bedroom, and I sat on the floor and I just put my arms, you know, on my knees and just looked like this. And I looked at Kathy and said, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I mean, I had a strong support mechanism there with my wife.
Yeah.
But, I wasn't leaving leadership. I was just wanting to leave the org. So how did you know to differentiate those two for you?
It's not easy. It's not easy because I'm the type of person that takes a hard look in the mirror and say, okay, maybe I really do need to learn the pivot tables. Okay. True story. Maybe it's me. Is it me? But the one thing I knew is I wasn't enjoying it. And I'm a pretty big believer that if you enjoy it, you're going to be successful. And if you're successful, you're going to enjoy it, kind of thing. Not that it has to make you giddy happy. I don't mean that, but it has to fulfill the desires of your heart when you think about it, in your mind when you think about it. It should. That's the ideal situation. But to your question was, I got to the point where I knew this situation was not, it just wasn't a fit for me, because I had been in better situations and I knew what happiness was and I knew what a good fit was. So I had to leave it. I had to change my environment to you know, to drive for my passion, what I'd love to do.
Scott, how about you? Where have you burned out?
Good question. I have burned out when I feel like I have hit the ceiling in places, and I've hit upon this kind of three-pronged framework a week or two ago, and I've been latching onto it. I've talked about being learned, earned, and burned. And learned means, have I kind of learned all I need to learn in this particular role? Yes, you can always learn something new, but am I sort of like maxed out, if you will? Yeah. Can I do this job in my sleep? Right. If the answer is yes, I've kind of learned all there is to learn there.
Yeah.
The earned piece is, have I maxed out my earning potential here? This is a big deal for me. So if I've blown through comp plans and I'm sort of at the top, and everybody will tell you there's no ceiling on commissions, it's uncapped. Yeah, fuck off. Like, you're not going to do 600% to quota all the time. So there's an invisible kind of cap there, right? So have I earned everything that I can earn in this particular role? That's two. So if I've hit those two things, and the third piece is burned, meaning I've been burned by the company, the boss, to Bob's point, right? If I hit those three things, that triggers burnout of some sort in me and triggers me saying, I need to go. Yeah. And that's kind of been I wish I had that framework 10, 15, 20 years ago as I was going through my career. I literally just kind of used that phrase a couple of weeks ago for the first time, but upon reflection, I have felt like that's been the case.
Pretty well articulated. I don't think I've heard it that way. And that's as usual. That's good. That's genius stuff, Scott. So Bob, we're getting sort of towards the end. We have our one last question, but we're going to quickly thank our sponsors of Salesforce Sales Cloud, Gong. Oops, no, Gong's not a sponsor, but congratulations, Gong, you got a free one. So
Richard, let me help you out, Richard. Thanks. Our sponsors in September, our wonderful sponsors have been Salesforce Sales Cloud, Outreach.io, Reggie.io, and Vidyard. Wonderful sponsors, great partners. We've had other sponsors in the past that Richard is remembering, but a little bit different setup right now. How can we be helpful to you, Bob? Is there any questions that you want to ask us? Is there anything that we can do for you? This is how we like to end every show.
Just keep doing what you're doing. Richard, we've had a number of stuff that we've worked on together, and you've been a really great person to, you're really helping us keep the ball moving forward in our business. So we really appreciate that. Scott, we haven't worked, we've done a couple little things here and there together, but maybe there's opportunity to work a bit closer in the future, and, for whatever that might be.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. You got to get Richard to, let me out of the basement, though. Keeps me locked up down there and steals all the good jobs.
Tell me what's going on with Surf and Sales. I know we had our Ashley from our team attend a few years ago. What are your plans?
Well, we snuck one in 2020, believe it or not, at the end of February, right before all hell broke loose.
Oh, yeah.
So we had a couple more planned that we had to scrap, of course. And then a few months back, we decided to kind of just go for it and book a couple events in November. So we've been fortunate to sell out 2 events in November. We're kind of running them back to back, and have some cool sponsors, and really, a really amazing group of people that's coming. Probably our most senior group, and really diverse group of people, which we're really proud of. And I think March of 2022, we'll probably try to do another 1 or 2. And yeah, as long as it's, still fun and still safe, then I think there's an appetite for it. Right. So.
Yeah. And a week from today, we'll be in Virginia for our first live event, an executive retreat in, almost 2 years.
Nice.
So, yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I think the other thing we evolved to is we're working to evolve the whole concept of providing value to sponsors, back to what you were saying, right? So now we do live webinars that we call bonfire sessions, and we bring in thought leaders and sponsors to have conversations around that kind of stuff. We also do different things with newsletters and stuff like that, because to your point, they do want, they want the registration info.
They want stuff.
They want stuff. So we've evolved that in the last year too, which was just sort of, to your point, on a fluke. And then, someone wants to pay us to do our podcast. Sure. Okay.
Yeah. That's great.
But thank you. And again, thanks for all the support you give to the community, because I know how much you put into it, and the whole organization over there. So we really appreciate you guys.
Well, thanks again. A lot of fun with you guys.
Thanks, Bob.
All right. Take care.